what happened in the phone connection with Art, who was supposed to be doing open lines tonight, but it gives him, an unexpected Friday night off to kick off a Memorial Day weekend. Do they celebrate Memorial Day weekend in the Philippines? Heck, they ought to. Consider how many U.S. servicemen died there, especially during World War II. But anyway, regardless, I hope Art has a nice weekend. But I want to go back to the idea that it's Memorial Day weekend. Now, it's important that we remember that Memorial Day is about those that had fallen, men and women who gave up their lives in service to this country. This is what we remember on Memorial Day. We remember for every war and for every loss, there was a family that was left behind who is still struggling. But part of those struggles can also be from people who are back from the war, but not back 100%, not back in the way that they were when they left. Now, sometimes those are physical injuries, and other times they're the severe mental kind, which we've been hearing about a little bit in the news lately. Dr. Ann Blake Tracy is going to join us coming up in just a moment. There's some startling new data about the number of returning veterans, those who are coming home from the war, who are on antidepressants, and the lack of help that's going to them to help manage them during this period of transition back into society. We all know about the tragedy that happened in Iraq when a soldier brought in a gun and killed other people that were there, even providing care for him. But the tragedies could get worse. And along with that is a story that Dr. Ann Blake Tracy has brought to our attention, too, about a father who has lost two sons to Iraq, who's got another story to tell about something potentially devastating and something that perhaps we're just beginning to hear of, but not yet in the mainstream media, which means you'll be hearing about it coming up this hour. Before we get to open lines next hour, Dr. Ann Blake Tracy coming up next, and then she'll be joined by somebody that she brought to our attention who's on a nationwide crusade to raise awareness about something that could be a tragedy averted if we act, if we understand what's really happening, and we think about it a little bit this Memorial Day weekend coming up next. It's a sad story to start with. We know well back, 10 days ago, dozen days ago, when U.S. Army Sergeant John Russell shot 5 U.S. troops at Camp Liberty, one of the largest U.S. installations in Iraq. This has then sort of started this whole conversation about men under stress. In this case, Sergeant John Russell, according to his father, had been threatened and reprimanded by superiors who believed that he was cracking a bit, and they were threatening to discharge him from the military. He's got a new house he was building. He's got payments. And as his own father and his son said, they broke him. And so he took a weapon, a 44-year-old electronics technician with the 54th Engineer Battalion, and he went on a murderous rampage, according to the Army's published report. So it just goes to show you that there's a lot of men under stress, and there's a lot of men who are coming back who are still under this kind of stress as well. Dr. Ann Blake Tracy is a frequent guest on Coast to Coast AM, and she is also 100% against the SSRI antidepressant class of drugs that are handed out so easily. And she's been on for years about her website, drugawareness.org. Good evening, Dr. Ann Blake Tracy.
Good evening, Ian.
So on this Memorial Day weekend, when our thoughts turn to those who sacrificed their lives for us, let's be mindful about a situation which you sent out in an email earlier this week in an alert that I couldn't stop thinking about.
Well, it's like I said, when we've got so many troops taking these drugs, look at Columbine. Eric Harris was refused admission into the military because he was on an antidepressant. That was in 99. What on earth has happened since then? in the decade since that now we have so many military personnel taking these medications.
Well, and so the number, if I'm reading this right, you're saying that it's the overwhelming percentage of soldiers returning home from Iraq are on antidepressants.
Well, those are numbers, Ian, that we have been tracking since the Gulf War. So what we have found as time goes on is that there are almost 90% is what Captain Joyce Riley was finding when she started looking.
Okay, almost 90% of the returning vets are on some kind of antidepressant.
Mainly being treated at VA hospitals.
Now, the VA hospital system is overburdened. We know that. They do the best they can. I'm sure they do. But already with SSRIs, we know that they require, in order for them to even be effective, they require a lot of adjustment, a lot of attention. Talk therapy must be involved, as well as the pharmaceutical response to depression. How much treatment are these soldiers getting along with these antidepressants?
From what I've heard, it's generally an antidepressant and next to nothing when it comes to any counseling or working through the problems. And I don't know if you noticed yesterday, the health ministries in Japan, which from what I understand is basically like their version of the FDA, issued a warning on the SSRI antidepressants saying that there is causal connection between the drugs and violence. And
so that
the most popular one has homicidal ideation as a side effect, and that's not just killing somebody. It's having constant ruminating thoughts of killing and different methods of killing. That's a side effect, the most popular antidepressant.
Which one has that? Which one has that? Is Effexor? Okay, that's right.
Yeah. So you can create this lean, mean killing machine that, of course, we would like out there protecting us, I guess. But when psychosis is listed as a side effect, too, you don't know which direction they're going to aim that gun.